The rising tensions between the United States and China, particularly in the South China Sea, have captured global attention due to the significant strategic, economic, and political implications. As two of the world's most powerful nations, the United States and China have been increasingly at odds over their respective roles and influence in this critical region. The South China Sea is not merely a body of water, it is a major artery of global commerce, a region rich in natural resources and a focal point of strategic military interest. These factors contribute to its status as one of the most contentious areas on the planet, with both the U.S. and China engaging in a high-stakes game of military posturing and brinkmanship that has the potential to escalate into a broader conflict. The strategic significance of the South China Sea cannot be overstated. It is a vital international waterway through which approximately $3.4 trillion in goods pass annually, representing a significant portion of global trade. This sea is also a resource-rich area, believed to contain vast reserves of oil and natural gas, making it an economic prize that numerous countries, including China, Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan, are keen to control. For China, the South China Sea is not only a matter of economic interest, but also a crucial element of its national security strategy. China's claim to nearly the entire South China Sea, demarcated by the so-called Nine-Dash Line, is based on historical grounds. However, this claim overlaps with the exclusive economic zones, EEZs, of several Southeast Asian nations, leading to numerous territorial disputes. To bolster its claims, China has engaged in a campaign of island building and militarization, transforming several reefs and atolls into artificial islands equipped with military facilities, including runways, hangars, radar installations, and missile systems. These actions have been widely condemned by the international community, including the United States, which sees China's activities as a threat to freedom of navigation and overflight in what it considers international waters. The U.S. response has been to conduct regular freedom of navigation operations, FONOPs, during which U.S. Navy ships and aircraft operate in the South China Sea to challenge what Washington views as excessive maritime claims by China and to assert the principle of free navigation in international waters. These operations have often led to close encounters between U.S. and Chinese military forces, raising the risk of miscalculation or unintended escalation. One of the most recent and notable encounters occurred in February 2023 when a Chinese J-11 fighter jet intercepted a U.S. Air Force RC-135 reconnaissance aircraft flying in international airspace over the South China Sea. The Chinese jet approached to within 20 feet of the U.S. aircraft, a dangerously close distance that forced the American pilots to take evasive action to avoid a potential collision. The U.S. Department of Defense characterized the Chinese pilots' actions as unnecessarily aggressive and dangerous, reflecting a broader pattern of behavior by China aimed at intimidating U.S. military operations in the region. This incident was not isolated. Similar encounters have been reported frequently, highlighting a concerning trend of increasingly aggressive Chinese military behavior. For instance, in December 2022, another J-11 fighter jet flew perilously close to a U.S. RC-135, prompting the American crew to undertake evasive maneuvers. Such close calls underscore the dangers inherent in these encounters and the potential for a serious incident that could lead to a broader military confrontation. The encounters are not limited to the air. In June 2022, an Australian P-8 maritime surveillance aircraft was intercepted by a Chinese J-16 fighter jet while conducting operations in the South China Sea. The Chinese jet released chaff, strips of metal used to confuse radar systems, in such a manner that some of the material was ingested into the Australian plane's engine, creating a hazardous situation that could have resulted in a catastrophic engine failure. This incident, like others, reflects the increasingly assertive and risky tactics employed by Chinese forces in the region. In another notable incident in October 2018, a Chinese destroyer came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur, a U.S. Navy guided missile destroyer, during a FONOP near the Spratly Islands. The dangerously close maneuver forced the Decatur to take evasive action to avoid a collision. The close proximity of these encounters at sea mirrors the aerial confrontations, illustrating a broader pattern of Chinese military assertiveness in challenging U.S. presence in the region. Between 2016 and 2023, there have been over 180 reported incidents of what the United States describes as unsafe or unprofessional maneuvers by Chinese aircraft and vessels near U.S. military assets in the Indo-Pacific region. These incidents typically follow a similar pattern. U.S. or allied forces conduct what they consider routine patrols in international airspace or waters, while China views these activities as provocations near its claimed territory. The Chinese intercepts are then seen by the U.S. as aggressive and dangerous, while China insists that they are necessary defensive measures to protect its sovereignty. This pattern of behavior underscores the deepening strategic rivalry between the U.S. and China and the competing narratives that each nation promotes regarding its actions in the South China Sea. For the United States, the primary objective is to maintain freedom of navigation and overflight, a principle that Washington argues is essential for global trade and security. The U.S. sees its patrols and FNOPs as a necessary counterbalance to what it perceives as Chinese attempts to assert control over international waters and to militarize the region. The Chinese government, on the other hand, argues that its actions are defensive and justified by the need to safeguard its territorial integrity and national security. Beijing views the presence of U.S. military forces in the South China Sea as an encroachment on its sovereignty and an attempt to contain China's rise as a global power. The legal framework governing airspace and maritime rights in the South China Sea is complex and contested. Under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, which China has ratified but the United States has not, countries have the right to an exclusive economic zone, EEZ, extending 200 nautical miles from their coastlines. Within this zone, nations have sovereign rights over natural resources but cannot impede the freedom of navigation or overflight by other states. China's 9-line claim, however, extends far beyond the limits set by UNCLOS, overlapping with the EEZs of other nations and encompassing nearly the entire South China Sea. This claim has been widely rejected by the international community, including by a 2016 ruling by an arbitral tribunal in The Hague, which found no legal basis for China's expansive claims. Despite this ruling, China has continued to assert its claims, arguing that its historical rights to the region supersede the tribunal's decision. This ongoing dispute over the interpretation of international law forms the backdrop for many of the tense encounters between U.S. and Chinese aircraft and vessels in the region. When a U.S. Navy patrol aircraft finds itself intercepted by a Chinese fighter jet, a series of well-rehearsed protocols are put into action. The primary objective for the U.S. crew is to maintain safety while continuing their mission, a delicate balance that requires quick thinking and precise execution. The first step in any intercept scenario is an attempt to establish communication with the approaching aircraft using international emergency frequencies, typically 121.5 MHz or 243.0 MHz. The U.S. crew will try to convey their intentions and request that the intercepting aircraft maintain a safe distance. This communication is crucial as it can help de-escalate the situation and prevent misunderstandings. If verbal communication fails or if the intercepting aircraft continues to maneuver aggressively, the U.S. aircraft may need to take evasive action. This can involve changing altitude, speed, or direction to create more separation from the intercepting jet. These maneuvers are carefully calibrated to increase safety without appearing provocative or confrontational. Throughout the encounter, the crew of the U.S. aircraft maintains constant communication with their command and control centers. Real-time information about the intercept is relayed, including the behavior of the intercepting aircraft, any communication attempts, and the current status of the U.S. aircraft and its crew. Depending on the severity of the encounter, additional U.S. military assets in the region may be put on alert. This can include scrambling fighter jets from nearby bases or aircraft carriers to provide support if needed. The presence of these additional assets can serve as a deterrent against further aggressive actions and provide immediate assistance if the situation escalates. Despite these tense encounters, the U.S. aircraft typically continues its reconnaissance mission. These patrols play a crucial role in gathering intelligence on Chinese military activities in the region, including the deployment of new weapon systems, the construction or expansion of facilities on artificial islands, and patterns of naval and air operations. The information gathered during these missions is invaluable for understanding China's capabilities and intentions in the South China Sea. It helps inform U.S. military strategy, diplomatic efforts, and policy decisions related to the region. U.S. Navy crews undergo extensive training to prepare for these scenarios. Regular drills and simulations help ensure that personnel can respond quickly and effectively to a wide range of potential intercept situations. This training emphasizes the importance of remaining calm under pressure, following established protocols, and avoiding actions that could unintentionally escalate the situation. The outcomes of these high-stakes aerial encounters can range from tense but harmless standoffs to potentially catastrophic events. In the best-case scenario, both aircraft maintain a safe distance, with the intercepting jet observing the U.S. plane briefly before breaking away. However, there is always the risk of a mid-air collision, as seen in 2001 near Hainan Island, when a Chinese fighter collided with a U.S. Navy plane, killing the Chinese pilot and leading to an 11-day diplomatic standoff. Even without physical contact, these encounters can ignite diplomatic clashes, with both sides lodging formal protests and accusations, further straining already fragile relations. Worse still, if a U.S. aircraft were damaged or forced down, it could trigger a chain reaction of military retaliation, escalating into a broader conflict. And it's not just about the U.S. and China. If an intercept occurs near allies like Japan or the Philippines, it could invoke mutual defense agreements, pulling other nations into the confrontation and significantly widening the conflict. The stakes couldn't be higher. The frequency and nature of these intercepts have far-reaching implications for military strategy in the Indo-Pacific region. For the United States, these encounters underscore the need for a robust and sustained presence in the area to counter China's growing assertiveness and reassure regional allies. These incidents have led to a reassessment of U.S. military posture in the region, with an increased emphasis on developing and deploying advanced reconnaissance and surveillance capabilities that can operate at greater distances, reducing the risk of close encounters. For China, these intercepts serve multiple strategic purposes. They assert China's territorial claims in a tangible way, demonstrating Beijing's willingness to challenge what it sees as U.S. intrusion into its sphere of influence. These actions also serve to gather intelligence on U.S. capabilities and operational patterns, information that is valuable for China's military planners. Moreover, these encounters allow China to test the resolve of the U.S. and its allies. By pushing the boundaries of acceptable behavior, China can gauge how far it can go before triggering a more serious response. This strategy of incremental assertiveness, sometimes referred to as salami slicing, allows China to gradually change the status quo in its favor without crossing the threshold into open conflict. Conversely, an overly aggressive U.S. response could escalate tensions and force regional countries to choose sides, a situation many wish to avoid. Looking to the future, the dynamics of U.S.-China military interactions in the South China Sea are likely to evolve in response to technological advancements, shifting geopolitical realities, and changing strategic priorities. One significant trend is the increasing use of unmanned systems. Both the U.S. and China are investing heavily in autonomous and remotely piloted aircraft and naval vessels. These systems could change the nature of intercepts, potentially reducing the risk to human life, but also introducing new complexities in terms of decision-making and communication. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are also likely to play a growing role in military operations. These technologies could enhance situational awareness, improve decision-making speed, and enable more sophisticated electronic warfare capabilities. However, they also raise questions about the potential for misunderstandings or unintended escalation if AI systems misinterpret complex situations. The ongoing development of hypersonic weapons and advanced missile systems could also alter the strategic calculus in the region. These weapons have the potential to overwhelm existing defense systems, potentially making certain types of naval and air operations more risky. Climate change is another factor that could influence future dynamics in the South China Sea. Rising sea levels could affect the status of disputed islands and reefs, potentially altering territorial claims. Increased frequency and severity of storms could also impact military operations in the region. There is a growing recognition of the need for clearer communication protocols and de-escalation strategies to prevent these incidents from spiraling out of control. Efforts to establish hotlines and agree on codes of conduct for unplanned encounters at sea and in the air are ongoing, though progress has been slow due to differing interpretations of international law and strategic interests. The role of international law in managing these conflicts remains crucial but contested. While the U.S. advocates for a rules-based international order, China often interprets these rules differently, leading to continued disagreements over the legality of military activities in the South China Sea. Future developments in international maritime law and its interpretation could have significant impact on how these disputes are managed. As both the U.S. and China continue to develop their military capabilities and refine their strategies, the potential for miscalculation remains a serious concern. Balancing assertiveness with restraint and competition with cooperation will be key challenges for both nations in the coming years. The stakes in the South China Sea are high, not just for the U.S. and China, but for the entire region and the global order. How these two powers manage their competition in this crucial waterway will have far-reaching implications for international security, trade, and the rule of law in the coming decades. The potential for missteps remains ever present, and the need for diplomatic solutions and clear communication channels is more critical than ever. As the world watches closely, the actions and decisions made by both the United States and China in the South China Sea will shape not only their bilateral relations, but also the broader dynamics of global politics in the 21st century. The challenge for both nations is to navigate this complex and volatile environment with a careful balance of strength and diplomacy, ensuring that their rivalry does not escalate into conflict, but rather contributes to a stable and prosperous Asia-Pacific region.